What's better, being a multi-sport athlete as a young kid or focusing on one specific sport? And then also, what's the value and what are some tips and techniques that we can teach coaches and parents to come alongside kids to help create a healthier mindset? Raising athletes, the things that causes all dads to go bald and moms to buy minivans, empowering parents to help their kids succeed. We brought in an expert, a former professional athlete who has turned into, I'm going to call her a world-renowned expert on this particular subject. She's got a bunch of resources. Summer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Wow, I hope I can live up to that.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. So listen, I know we just recently met and we've had some conversations leading up to the show here, but I want everyone to know, and I'm going to give you a second to obviously give it some context and talk about what it is that you do and your background, but I want everyone to know that in my study and in my research of you, and I've gone down that rabbit hole, I've watched a lot of things, I've read a lot of your resources now, you legitimately know your stuff. You are an expert. You're coming from a place of experience. You're coming from a place of experience, like you've done this for a long time. You're a mom, you're a parent, you've got kids going through the process now, and you've studied this, and now you literally teach it. You've got books. So there's very few people, I think, that would be able to be offer an authority on this particular subject better than you. So I really, really am so grateful that you're here to help the audience to understand this particular topic. So Summer, take it away if you could, and just let everyone know who you are, what you represent, because obviously I did talk you up. Everyone thinks you're a celebrity. They're going to want to find you and stalk you and get your autograph. But let them know, seriously, what have you done in the past?
Well, thank you for that. Wow. So we all need a cheerleader in our corner sometimes too, which I know we're going to talk about for the kids and the parents and coaches. So I call myself a multifaceted woman. I mean, I've done a lot of different things in my life, but today I would call myself a fearless mindset and performance coach, in addition to being CEO mom. So that's who I am today. And yeah, my background, I've evolved as a high school physical education and health teacher. I even ran the after school detention and discipline committee. I'm a retired pro athlete. I was a track athlete. I've coached anywhere from age 2 all the way up to pros. I've helped pros that were trying to get, to that next level. So I've kind of seen it all, but I've also experienced my own adversity and traumas in life. And a lot of those revolved around becoming a mom without a mom. And I ran a fitness center, 6,000 square foot fitness center for 20 years, recently sold it. And now I'm just using my talents in a different capacity. And I'm actually really thankful for the opportunity to share, because I see a gap, especially for young people, especially our girls, that we can work together to move forward.
It's not every day that people get access to someone who was a professional for their particular sport. They were considered one of the best in their particular sport in the world. That's really, really cool. So I think that a lot of parents who right now are like, oh, my kids are young, that's the goal I want. They want to hear something from you here. So talk a little bit about that sort of professional aspect of your history.
Sure. So as a pro athlete, it could be summarized into train, eat, sleep. Like that is what it was. Social life sometimes took a back burner because performing at my best. And so when I say I'm a performance coach, I say I'm a mental performance coach, but also a sports performance coach, the nutrition aspect, the training aspect. So everything was very regimented, right? And outlined. And so what we see, some of our kids eating, for example, today, you got to think differently. Same with sleeping habits, right? Back in my day, it was the social media. Your life pretty much revolved around the sport and being able to, peak performance. That was your life. So my social life definitely took a backseat.
Yeah, I it's funny. I just recently had a conversation. There was a parents a week ago that came to me because they know, listen, I was a former Division I full scholarship athlete, and they were like, what is it going to take for my kid to become a Division I full scholarship athlete? And I gave the answer. I said 5,000 hours. They were confused by this. And they were like, 5,000 hours? And I said, yeah, I would say a bare minimum of 5,000 hours before they get to college of committing it to to training, to their craft, to become more disciplined. And they were like mind blown by this. And I said, that's what it is. I mean, it's a sacrifice. And you got to understand when I remember being about 14, 15 years old and being on my travel teams and being, I was trained by some professional athletes, and I was in the gym, or I was with, honestly, this is back in the 90s too. I was with, personal trainers when my friends were sort of just, BSing on outside somewhere. And that's fine. It's great for them. And I wouldn't say it's bad for me, but that was the sacrifice that I made. I remember my friends going to parties and hanging out, and I'd be like, I can't. I've got my commitment. I got to make this. And so you are 100% right. I'm so actually, it's refreshing to hear you say what you said about this, about the commitment and sacrifice it takes to be able to have a child. Potentially, not all kids can develop into this, but potentially at least leave it open for them to develop into an elite athlete. It's not just because you want it, right? There's a lot of hard work and dedication that goes into it.
Absolutely. And just to kind of share a quick story, like how I kind of get into it. So when I was 15, I ran track. Like I captained the volleyball team, ran track, did all this stuff. And I was having knee issues. And so going through physical therapy, I started seeing how weight training was helpful. And so again, this was very early 90s, that then I found a woman who I was like, oh, wow, she's strong. So I started learning. And so for me, that kind of came within, right? My parents were not pushing me to do that. I was like intrigued by it. So that's actually how I started weight training, lightly at 15 years old, saw that it helped my performance, and kind of just had an interest throughout that. So I was someone that was always like, oh, how can we take things to the next level? And so some kids right now, parents are dictating that and pushing that, and we have to allow them to decide on their own and ask for those things. And back in my day, there was not like the travel sports. There weren't private lessons. But yeah, I had to go out on my own and put in the practice, or seek out other mentors and people to help me.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you were able to find a mentor, you mentioned you saw another woman in the gym or training, having that then was huge. It's so important now to have a great mentor to come alongside, whether that be, by the way, coaches need mentors too. Let's not forget that coaches need mentors. Parents, you need mentors as well. Even myself, and I don't know how you feel about this, but for me, so yeah, I played, for example, baseball at a high level. I still need a mentor, right? I played baseball at a high level 20 plus years ago. And so of course I'm still learning. I still talk to coaches that are active right now. I still talk to players, and I want to learn more, because as much as I experience, I don't know everything. And I think we all have to be a little bit more humble about the approach and stop drinking the Kool-Aid of this process that, this is another conversation, by the way, that is motivated by money for a lot of these organizations. But I think this is a perfect segue into something here, and which is the primary topic, which is multi-sport athletes. You said it's important to let the kid decide. Let the kids, in a way, be in the driver's seat. Now, listen, you leave kids to make the decision on their own, they're probably going to, just eat milk and cookies all day, right? So they need some type of guidance. But yes, I think it's healthy to allow kids to be in that driver's seat. So tell me a little bit from your perspective as an expert who has studied this for a while. What is the age where kids should start thinking about maybe being a little bit more selective about the sport that they're playing? And do you think it's important for parents to allow kids to play multiple sports?
Absolutely. Well, first I want to say that, like you said, the decision, planting the seed, a good coach, a good mentor might plant a seed in a child, right? But still the kid needs to decide. And I just want to give you a quick example. My daughter on her team was at first base all the time, right? She was great. She could catch, she could throw. And so a coach planted a seed. You know what? You might be good at catcher. And at first she wasn't, on board with the idea, because she's a kid who has to make the decision herself, right? And so it's learning how kids operate, how they respond. So if we would have pushed her to try catcher, she probably wouldn't want to be a catcher. She decided on her own, okay, I want to try it, and is now seeing that she has a lot of potential to do that. So this is another prime example. Okay, so as a 10-year-old, yeah, catcher can throw kids out from, home to second. She goes outside, throws a football. She's interested in playing volleyball. So she's doing other things. And a lot of people think that when we say multi-sport, it means they have to be an organized sport. Well, no, she's not on an organized football team, but she plays at school. She plays outside. She's got a cannon, right? Throwing the football. Now it's translating to volleyball. She's trying volleyball. She's excited about it because she's been trained as an athlete by me a little bit too. Obviously, like I started teaching my kids early how to move, how to high knee, because what we're seeing too is these kids maybe play a sport, and we'll just go back to the softball, baseball thing. But can they actually run properly to first base? That's what I sit there on the side. I'm going, oh my gosh, can I get my hands on this kid and teach them how to move their arms and how their foot should hit, right?
Right. And basic athleticism. I agree with that.
Yeah. So, it's only going to benefit kids by trying a lot of different modalities, different movement patterns, and it's going to help them. So like I've seen it in my own kids, because my husband and I do not believe in specializing them earlier. We want them to try different things, and they might not be the best player on their team, right? But people can see the potential of their athleticism. And when we were talking about going to college or becoming a pro, college coaches want athletes. Because you know what? Like I just read something the other day of a girl who played a certain position in volleyball the entire time in high school. Now in college is playing a different position in college. Well, guess what? If you're not an athlete, first and foremost, you're not going to be able to adapt to that mentally and physically, right? The movement patterns. So, so I'm all about multi-sport athletes as long as humanly possible for these kids under some of the conditions, though, that are being placed on them by coaches and organizations, unfortunately.
What about reducing risk? Do you think a child who plays multiple sports, do you think that there's a physical benefit as far as reducing even injury for these kids? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, because if you're doing the same movement patterns all the time, you're going to start developing or even overdeveloping or overstressing certain areas. And so I can't remember if we mentioned before, but I became a National Strength and Conditioning Association certified strength and conditioning specialist well over 20 years ago. And one of the things too is, if you're doing sports performance training in the weight room or whatever, sometimes the training is to actually counteract the movements that you're doing. So for example, in some sports, somebody might be overdeveloping their quads, okay? And now the hamstrings are weak. Well, in the weight room, we need to make sure the hamstrings and the quads are at the appropriate ratio so that it doesn't lead to knee problems. So hopefully I'm making sense that way. So playing different sports, you're using different movement patterns. And so, you're going to reduce your risk of injury physically, but then kids aren't going to get as mentally burnt out as well either. Even pro athletes, it's called periodization, go through detraining periods, or they even, if they're allowed, depending on their sport, will do a pickup game of this or that, right? Just to keep things fresh and to stimulate different muscle fibers and your nervous system.
Let's do a little myth busters here. Help me bust this particular myth as it relates to this topic, because you said something that triggered something for me. Is college recruiters, there's a myth, and I've heard a lot of parents and even some people on the high school level say this, that college recruiters do not want kids who were multi-sport athletes in high school. Can you help me bust this myth?
I have heard the opposite directly from college coaches, as well as people who do college recruiting for a living. Typically, the school of thought is, no, they want an athlete that has done multiple sports throughout their life. Now, I think some of them understand that in high school, kids are being forced to pick a sport, but they definitely would rather have a well-rounded athlete than a specific player. The other issue that I'm hearing and seeing from coaches and even the recruiters, well, mostly the coaches, when they get to them, sometimes they're like, wow, some of these kids weren't even taught the proper fundamentals, and they're actually having to go back and train fundamentals. So there kind of is a whole triad of things happening.
Yeah, I want to fundamentals. I'm going to go back to that for a second because I want to talk about that. But before I do, one more myth buster. I need you to help me to sort of bust this particular myth. Is that there are certain people that say, and this one on my end in the Northeast, especially, I hear a lot of parents think this: the only way for a young athlete to become an elite athlete is to focus on one. The only way to increase your skill is to simply focus on that one particular sport, and that's the only way to get better. Can you help me out here? How can we bust this particular myth?
So at a certain point, possibly they might have to focus, but in order to be an elite athlete, you're going to be doing sports performance training. Okay, and so from my aspect, that is kind of like that multi-sport, right? Because if you have a good sports performance trainer, they're going to be first and foremost making sure you're healthy, your joints, your ligaments, counteracting the overuse patterns that you're doing. Okay. And taking a look at the overall, your nutrition and so forth. So every athlete's going to be a little different. As we know, we've got those gifted, talented athletes.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, I think if you can play multiple sports, like I said, even if it's not competitive, like that, you're just out there having fun. So yeah. I know I'm not directly busting your myth here, because I do think it depends on an individual basis. But if a child is so burnt out by the time they go to college because they've been playing this sport mentally, physically, and then they're like, oh, I don't even want to play in college. We took the fun out of it. And that's something I talk about a lot. We have lost the art of just playing and having fun. And like we talked about, the positive mental health benefits of what athletics and sports is. So we need to take that into account too. Where's the fun? It should be fun, because I'll tell you what, even as a pro athlete, sure, there were times like it felt like a chore, but it needed to be fun and fulfilling and here, because those trophies, those scholarships, like we talked about, are few and far between, and our long-term mental and physical health, that impact should definitely be taken into consideration too.
Absolutely. The stats, and I know it varies by sport, but in general, only 1% of varsity high school athletes will receive a full scholarship to do a Division I college. This is only, by the way, you have to make your varsity team to even be included into this stat. When you factor in all of these other kids who maybe, fall off a little bit earlier than that, it's lower. So we're talking about a very, very low number. And that's why I am aligned with you, is why do we have to say it's D1 or bust? Why can't we say, hey, middle school, JV, varsity, these are all incredible milestones that should be celebrated. And also, why can't we create healthy environments that help kids develop now? Why can't this also be a great goal that we could celebrate with them? You bring in mental stuff, the mental fitness and mindset training. I'd love to transition to this right now. The role of mental fitness and mindset training. Now, this is not something, when I was in middle school and high school, I got to be honest, I did not hear these terms at all. It was not discussed. No one said anything to me. There was nothing like that. The first time I had anyone talk to me about any type of like the mental aspect of it, honestly, was when I was in college, and we had someone on staff, and there was a certain amount of time per week that we would actually spend on, oddly enough, on the mental aspect of the games. We would sit in a room, and he would talk to us, and it would help develop it. It was I remember the first time I went into that class, I thought I was going to be as bored as anything. I'm like, what on earth are we doing? I'm not touching a baseball? This is so weird. In hindsight, I'm realizing, holy cow, that was huge. That was amazing, and I'm glad we're introducing it now. So do me a favor, as the leading world expert on all things mindset and mental fitness, listen, I'm going to lean on you here, because this is definitely your area of expertise. Beyond physical skills, where does mental fitness and mindset training fit in for young kids? When should parents be introducing this to their kids?
So I believe we should start it young, right? And it's at a developmentally appropriate, and it could be just the way we use words, right? Or the way we use that we ask questions, even, right? So I see some of the workbooks I've developed, I've got 8U teams using them and they're seeing benefit even, okay? Because I try to make things developmentally appropriate and I explain it like math. You've got addition and subtraction, and this goes for the mental part and the physical. Addition and subtraction, right? Multiplication and division. If we're trying to teach mental fitness principles or even physical principles and we skipped all the way to calculus, well, no one's going to get the full benefit, right? And that's what, the whole development thing. So we can start asking questions and getting kids to come up with the answers. That is my biggest thing when it comes to mental fitness, is how can we guide them, right, on to shift their thoughts, for example, or to make those decisions that help themselves. Now you mentioned, and yeah, back in my day, no, there wasn't even, I think I brought the weight room like to our college, even, quite honestly. Like, girls just,
Is that right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So so kind of to go back for a second there. Oh my gosh, now I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Is I was not exposed to the mental fitness aspect either. But what I recall is when I was, training for different things, going, all right, I put in 100% of the work. I'm happy with what I'm bringing today. So regardless of the outcome, I'm okay with what happens. I don't honestly know where that came from. I really don't. I just know I had good support people. But that inner belief, if we can instill that in all kids, that they believe in themselves, that good self-awareness, that they're putting in the effort, they're putting in the work, and that, what, I did my best. And whether I bring home a trophy or not, I'm happy with what I brought today.
Yeah.
We also need to recognize and let kids know, like, you learn from failure. If you never fail, you're never going to grow.
Oh my gosh. I am loving that last line right here, because I have that like on repeat to my kids. And this is probably, if I had to rank, if someone said, all right, you have to give me the one reason why sports are important for kids, in my opinion, it is it might be the only environment where you can teach kids in a controlled, healthy environment how to lose, how to fail. You can't learn really that in a competitive environment in school. You can't. It doesn't exist. But sports, oh my gosh. And think about the incredible lessons kids learn from losing a game. Leadership qualities you learn from losing in a game. And if you got that right mentor that gives that healthy perspective, you're creating a winning human being for the rest of their life. And this is music to my ears. You're literally getting me excited now on this particular subject. I mean, this is incredible. So obviously this is something that you teach. I'm going to, for everyone that's watching, because you can listen to the show, and we appreciate everyone that subscribes to the show, but you can also watch it on YouTube. For everyone who's watching on YouTube, I am going to actually put up right now your website. All right, so what I'm showing here is your website. People can go to summermontabone.com. Yeah, you can see it, the URL right there. And I'm on the page, Summer, if you can sort of talk to everyone about your workbooks a little bit. I'm on the page that's showing all of the workbook resources that you have.
Sure, absolutely. So again, kind of being a teacher background, there's different learning styles, and a lot of coaches, a lot of sports, it's all auditory and verbal all the time. We're talking at kids all the time. And so one reason I came up with the workbook is to allow for the self-discovery, but also the pen to paper. We need to process information. We need to process emotions from pen to paper. And, I developed these workbooks, like I said, they're for, ages 9 to 16. I would say my sweet spot is that 10 to 12-year-old range. I designed these ones specifically for girls because that's a whole nother topic. A lot of girls are going through different things. And same thing, I've studied girls in particular. Girls are more perfectionists. Girls are really good at masking. Some of them do not show you. They're not going to open up to you. Some of them have a hard time connecting with male coaches. And as we know, a lot of times more coaches. So the workbooks offer different things on growth mindset, reframing, a lot of pen to paper discovery, and even coloring pages. We know adult coloring books are popular these days for stress relief and creativity. And so again, it's just, I developed these as a tool for her, right? For the girl. But really it's a tool for the parents and the coaches that you can give to the child and facilitate, and it gives you a framework. I have coaches from organizations all the time saying, thank you for this framework. I got a message yesterday. This is so easy to put in part of our practice, because that's the other, excuse that coaches use. Well, we don't have enough time to work on this at practice. And I'm like, if you took 10 minutes, you would increase your performance by over 20% if you made this part of the culture, you made it part of it, and you mentioned leadership, right? Like there's just so many things that go together. And the workbook is a framework and a guide that can be used at home and in practice.
Now, I'm going to do a series of myth-busting questions as it relates to your workbook and the subject here about mental training. There's a myth that mental toughness is something that you're born with. What's your opinion on this? And can mental toughness, mental training, is that something that can be taught?
Absolutely. You can shape your thought patterns, but let's talk about genetics for a second. There are people born with certain brain chemistry, born with certain wiring. Okay. There are, for example, happiness. And that was something because of what I experienced postpartum. I went on a deep dive on happiness. Happiness is actually linked to 50% of your genetics. So some people, yes, are going to have a little bit harder time developing the mental toughness aspect. And, that can be all over the place. What is actually mental toughness? My definition, being able to take someone belligerently yelling and screaming at you does not make you mentally tough. But anyway, the brain, we need to look at neuroscience sometimes too, and neuroplasticity in the brain, and realize that not everybody's the same. We learn differently. We respond differently to things.
Now, another myth-busting question I have for you is that some coaches believe that mindset training takes away from practice, takes away from physical drills, and does not help the team. What's your response to that?
Not at all. It's like, how can I further the conversation if someone is so close-minded? I mean, to be honest, it is shown, because what you believe, you become. And I just know in my own life, all the adversity I personally have faced, my belief is what helped me move forward, because I don't think I'm definitely was not the most talented. I know my hard work and my belief in myself, right, has helped. I've also seen and worked with so many kids that when they start believing in themselves, they start moving forward because they're no longer feeling as afraid to fail. So they're going to try new things, or they can bounce back and move forward. I've witnessed way too many kids that are so afraid to make a mistake because the coach is going to get upset with them that it has harmed their performance. As soon as we can let go of that and move forward, they make mistakes, move on from them, and they get better. So mental performance, and even just mental imagery, taking 5 minutes to visualize and play out. And that was something I did a lot back in my day, was play through how I wanted things to go. It's shown that it increases performance by 20%.
Yeah, I completely agree with this, and to even bring in my personal experience, I told you I wasn't introduced to this stuff until I was in college, and one of the techniques that we worked on a weekly basis, you said visualization. This is what we did. We would go into this room, we'd have to sometimes close our eyes, and then even shut the lights off, and they would walk us through this image that they want us to visualize, so that we can develop this ability when we're in a game situation to visualize certain results. I was a pitcher, to visualize things. That's a big aspect. And I try to teach kids this, and they struggle. I'm going to be honest. Kids struggle with it. And so on the topic of struggle, I want to know, in your opinion, and this question is going to be helpful to parents and for coaches right now is, what are you seeing as being some of the most common struggles kids, we'll define kids as anyone honestly younger than 14 is a kid still, in my opinion, right? So any kids who are struggling in athletics, but when it comes to the mental aspect of things, this is an important question because I want parents to understand that if their child is dealing with this, they're not, number one, they're not the only one, and it doesn't make them a weak player. It doesn't mean that they can't overcome this. There's a lot of kids going through this stuff, and coaches, I want them to hear your answer because I want them to understand that an amazing player is not necessarily someone who can withstand your torment and your torture. That's not someone who defines a great player who's tough like that. That's physical toughness and mental toughness are different, and someone who can withstand abuse is not someone necessarily who makes an elite athlete. So if you could do me a favor so that we can give some perspective here for coaches and parents, what are you seeing as being some of the most common mental struggles that young athletes are facing? And could you just walk us through maybe some helpful tips that parents and coaches can have to help walk these kids through that process?
Sure. So the most common things I hear from parents, right, is confidence and resilience. Like those are the two words, right? My kid needs to be more confident. They need to be more resilient. Well, and they're like, what can I do? And I'm going to be honest. You really can't do anything. It has to come from within, but you can guide them. Okay. So one of my biggest things is stop talking to kids and start asking them questions. And I'm going to give you an example. There was a team that I was asked, would I talk to them? They were little pockets. They weren't doing well. They weren't cohesive. They weren't, they had the athletic potential, but they were losing games, right? So my talk with them was sitting them down. Hey, Susie, tell me, what's your favorite place to vacation? We didn't even talk about the sport. Kids want to know that they're valued and that you care about them and they're connected. And so sometimes as parents and coaches, we need to stop talking about the sport itself and just get to know the individual so that they then feel that it's okay, that they're supported no matter what. We talk about unconditional love, right? But yet there's kids that feel like my mom or dad's gonna be mad at me because I struck out today, or whatever it may be. So our words, what we say, the environment we're creating at home is really important. And so we need to, as parents and coaches, become better listeners. You don't need to have all the right answers. You need to be asking the right questions, because you said something earlier too. You might also have a kid who is a diamond in the rough, but you're not communicating them on a level that you're connecting with them. And so from my perspective, having been very well taught by my college professors, we're leaving a lot of kids kind of behind in the coaching world because we have volunteer coaches who, God bless your heart, like, thank you for putting the time in, but they're not equipped to address multiple individuals with multiple learning styles or learning how to connect with them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I just also want to add there, it's not just volunteer coaches. I think that the majority of people are not fully equipped to understand the proper techniques in teaching a child, even paid coaches. I think everyone, for example, needs to find resources like you, reach out to people like you to learn the best way to teach a child to help them become just effective kids. Because listen, a coach wants a great team, then invest your time into this, because they'll become a better player by default of becoming, stronger as far as the mental game. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to add that I really think everyone needs to really work on developing proper strategies of working with kids.
Absolutely. And, part with this workbook, for example, I have 2 supplemental worksheets, and one of them is called Get Set, for softball or whatever sport is. So Get Set for softball. And I encourage coaches to have the kids answer these quick questions and then take 5 minutes one-on-one and go over those. how many coaches in team sports are sitting down with the kids one-on-one? So if you as a coach want to improve the confidence and resilience, get to know the kid, because you're going to find out some very valuable information that you might not know in those conversations. I'm going to give you an example. My oldest daughter did Taekwondo sparring. Okay. And she was a first runner-up national champion in Taekwondo sparring. And her grandmaster was from Korea, 7-degree black belt. And if you can imagine the way, just culturally and in the sport, there were some things we had to navigate at home a lot because the way he presented. So for example, she was first runner-up at these nationals. And after she lost the match, he goes, "I am glad you did not win." Okay. And
Wow.
so, right. So what he meant was, I'm glad you didn't come and win your first nationals, because then you wouldn't work as hard in the future. Okay. So that story is important for other coaches who coach my daughter to realize that's one reason she is emotionless. She is not going to react and respond, whether she strikes out or whether she hits a home run, partly because of that. If her grandmaster told her good, she knew that you needed an outstanding or you needed an excellent. So that information, taking 5 minutes to understand how my daughter operates, is valuable in coaching her, if that makes sense. And the
Hmm.
same with my kid is one that does better one-on-one. There's too much going on when you're
Yeah.
giving instructions in a group, right? So again, to go back, have one-on-one conversations. Take the 5 minutes. If you want to build the confidence, help the resilience, the kid is going to feel more connected to the coach. And this goes for parents too. Just
Yeah.
ask questions. Just ask questions and listen.
Yeah, that's really really good advice. I is encouraging parents and coaches to value listening a little bit more in those opportunities that you have with the kids. And for coaches, I'm going to speak right directly to you guys. If you really want to get the most out of your players, you got to invest that one-on-one time. But if by you taking the time to understand and learn more about your players, you're going to be able to actually coach them better. They're going to. I think that kids will respect the coach a lot more if a coach takes the time to do that. And parents, I think it's important that we're not vicariously living through our kids in that moment, but let our kids live that moment. That's so very, very important as well. Now, someone who has authored many of these workbooks, you've seen a lot of kids use them. Listen, I know the answer. I know you're going to say yes, they're valuable, but I want to know the why for parents and coaches that are listening. Maybe there's even a kid listening right now. What do you see as the value in a young athlete using some type of workbook or planner to help them navigate through this process, whether that be accountability, keeping track of stuff? Like, talk to us a little bit about what is the value in a resource for a young athlete.
So first and foremost, I honestly think self-awareness is one of the most important things. And let's be honest, sometimes you have the kid that's a little bit delusional, and they have the opposite problem. They think they're way better than they actually are. And that's okay, right? We love their spirit. So sometimes we can look at different metrics to help them assess. And as adults, we need to learn how to be self-aware and self-assess. You also mentioned accountability. And yes, that's something I actually incorporated in the workbook with these activity trackers, that the kid can take ownership. And I'm all about, the only way for anything to be effective is when the child, or again, if it's for ourselves, when we take ownership. Okay. That's the only way we're going to move forward. And so there's an activity tracker that they can track. Did they go out and do tea work, or did they throw in the yard? Did they do a journal prompt? Whatever it may be. Did they work on some, and kids like that. So it gives them a framework and accountability, a tracker, right? That these are also life skills, our executive functioning skills for the future. And that's why I say it's really personal growth in a sports fashion, and helping them level up their mental and physical fitness, the mind body connection too. And then it allows them to process their feelings. It allows them to problem solve by pen to paper. And the facilitation is important too, because it's just like, if I give you a hammer, but I don't tell you how to use it. So that's where coaches and parents do need to help facilitate with the kids. And I know I have a lot of coaches that tell their kids, hey, bring your workbook to practice. We're going to, just talk about see what you came up with on page 10 or whatever it may be. And so kids are actually getting excited about it too. Like they love it and they look forward to it. And that's what makes me so happy, is it's a tool that they feel is supporting them. They can take ownership, and it's also personal to them. Because think about it, nobody likes to be told what to do. And this workbook allows them to kind of, again, self-discover, problem solve, and process.
And also, I'll put in a layer, you add consistency. I would imagine that someone who consistently uses this book develops healthy habits, and then they become less reliant on maybe the book. Not that to say that they shouldn't be using it moving forward, but now all of a sudden you've adopted all of these healthy habits, and the high-end approach to all these things that we discussed now just becomes natural. So what about for parents? Let's talk to parents right now. Is what role do parents have when it comes to resources like your workbook, into making sure that their kids stay consistent? Because, for a lot of kids, if it's not a video game, they're not going to be engaged that long with it, right? And so what are some things that you can share to parents and also to coaches of what they could do to help keep their kids consistent with using this workbook?
Yeah, so just like with anything, we don't need more information. We typically just need more facilitation. So like you said, the consistency. So we need touch points, right? Like just a little check-in, whether it's a weekly check-in. And so with the activity tracker, some coaches, especially for the younger ones, to help them develop the habit, they might have a reward or stickers. Heck, in my fitness center, the adults, we did sticker charts. When they came into their workout, oh yeah, they wanted to put a sticker on the chart. Sometimes we need just that little teeny tiny thing, that checkpoint, that check mark. That works for some people.
All right. I think we should get a series of stickers for parents. You should put that out. I think a ton of people would buy it. A sticker award system for parents. When parents, hey, you did not actually micromanage today, you get a sticker.
Yeah, right. We all have habits, right, that we're trying to break as parents and coaches. And that's where, along with that, is as parents and coaches, we need to be self-aware. And you mentioned something earlier about our parents vicariously living through their kids. Mm-hmm. We need to recognize that it's not, their journey is not our journey. And we need to sometimes ask ourselves as parents and coaches, is there some healing that we need to do? Is there some personal growth we need to do? Are our expectations on these kids in alignment with our own behavior? And that's a hard pill to swallow for some coaches and parents, but it needs to be talked about. We cannot have higher expectations for these kids than we have for ourselves. And we can't ask them to display behavior. They model what they see. So if they're not having the appropriate behavior being modeled to them, then we need to just have appropriate expectations.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this, and I know you would agree. We're not. I don't think we're talking from the perspective of we're not setting lower standards for kids. We want kids to be excellent, right? We want kids to definitely give their best effort and try hard and fulfill potential, so we're not saying to fall short of potential, but to your point, I think you're right. I think some parents need to find an actual therapist and not look at their kids' sports as their therapy. And I think everyone would benefit from it. So listen, parents, we love you, and you're doing the right thing by having your kids involved with sports, because I'm a big advocate. I know it sounds like you're a huge advocate of sports as well. And so there's so much there for your kids. Let's just make sure, I think, as parents and coaches, we're not getting in the way of the good stuff. And I think collectively as a community of people who are coaching and parenting, I think we could do better. And I think it's okay for us to admit that. And I think everyone will benefit from it if we do. So Summer, do me a favor. As we wrap up here, I want to just give a quick thing, maybe about 3 questions here as we wrap up. This is sort of like a sum up here. Because we had a really great discussion. For people that don't have a lot of time to listen to the whole show, they want to fast forward right to the conclusion here. Number 1, give us a rundown. What are the primary takeaways for parents as far as the subject of multi-sports and mental training?
Okay, so takeaways for multi-sports. Yes, multi-sports, different movements. It's good for your body. It's also good for your brain. Whether it's competitive or not, try a bunch of stuff. do it all. Yeah, so mental sports is good. Mental fitness, my biggest thing is always ask more questions. Talk less, ask more questions. That's the best way I can summarize that for you. I think that's the number one thing. If anyone starts adapting that skill of asking more questions, talking less, you're going to see a lot more positive things happen.
And for parents that are getting some resistance, let's say from their school coach, where their school coach is saying, no, we don't want you to be playing multiple sports. We only want you to focus on the sport that I'm coaching you. What can we arm with parents as a good response to these coaches? Because I've heard this myself. There are parents that feel like their kids are getting punished by these coaches if they find out that these kids are playing multiple sports. What is something that we can arm these parents with as a really, really great response to these coaches?
So that's definitely going to be a tough one because obviously every coach is different too, and you need to know who you're speaking with. But my life philosophy is communication is the key to successful relationships. And so going back to the questions, I would always say, what questions would you have for the coach? And so it might be, Coach, can you please clarify for me, what your expectation is for my child on this team? Can you please clarify for me why you don't want them to play multiple sports? That might then lead you into an actually effective conversation instead of it being confrontational. And I know a lot of parents don't want to talk to coaches or they're like afraid to. We see all these anonymous posts, right, in these groups. At some point, we also have to decide when is it time to advocate for our own child, because that's also our responsibility as a parent too, and coaches have responsibility. So it goes back to that. And then again, I know sometimes with the training schedules and the expectations, but also then looking at the overall health. So, if your child, and I go back to, as a pro athlete, I mean, sometimes I was training 6 days a week, but a lot of times it was 5. And if you have high school kids who are going to school all day long, training 6 days a week, sometimes 7, we need to start asking more questions on, is this healthy? Is this actually helping them perform better or with the rest in recovery? So I think that's also the aspect is some of these kids are in one sport and it literally is daily and they don't even have hobbies or free time. And we need to have hobbies too. Like that's important as well.
Oh yeah, we could have a whole episode dedicated to doing things that are not sport related that help athletes. That is an absolute truth. Now, I think I was reading, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of your philosophies is was it dream big and be fearless? Is that what it is?
Yes, we should all have goals, aspirations, things we want to try, even if they're big, audacious goals, something to look forward to, something to challenge ourselves. And for me personally, there were a lot of times where people told me, oh, you'll never be able to do that, or you can't do that. Even, comments around my body. And so I decided myself, like, okay, I'm still going to go after it. So that's part of the be fearless is it's not that you're never going to have fear, but have the courage to try, to fail, get up, keep going, and keep moving forward.
Summer, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, once more time, why don't you remind everyone, where can they go to learn a little bit more about all these amazing resources that we outlined for them, and where can they follow you if they want to stalk you?
Absolutely. So as far as I know, I'm the only Summer Montabone. So if you search Summer Montabone on Amazon, you're going to find my resources, my workbooks. As we said earlier, my website is summermontabone.com. And there's a tab for the workbooks specifically, as I'm moving more towards putting out more of those resources. And on social media, yep, I'm on Facebook, Summer Montabone, Instagram, Summer Montabone. And yes, please do connect with me. I like to be a support and offer solutions for people that are looking for them.
Awesome. Well, listen, Summer, thank you again so much for joining me in this conversation. I feel like I learned so much from you. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I say this genuinely. I cannot endorse you any more than I'm saying right now, because I think you're incredible. Your resources are incredible, and I think this is a really important things that parents and coaches need to consider for their kids. I think it's going to be helpful for them. I think anything that helps a kid, do it for them, especially these type of workbooks. So I applaud you for everything that you've done, and I'm looking forward to seeing the incredible success of these workbooks for athletes around the world.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share and talk and have open discussions, because that's what it's all about, right? Like leaving people better than we found them.
That's, oh my gosh, well put. That should be on a fortune cookie. Maybe that should even be the title of your next book. I love it. Well done. Thanks you again. And thanks everyone for tuning in to Raising Athletes. We're in this together. Remember, the tide rises for all ships. So we can do this together as a community. We can do a little bit better. And it starts with just dedicating ourselves to learning a little bit more. And as you said, Summer, you know what? You said it best. We got to talk a little bit less and ask more questions and invest into our kids, and they'll benefit from that investment, guys. So we'll see you next time on Raising Athletes. Take care, everyone.